Quantum is finally on the rise back up over a year later, and it's coming back fairly strong. Schicksal's Imperative is the hottest new battlesuit coming in version 7.7 of Honkai Impact 3rd, as we have our first Part 1 character make a resurgence, even if it is only a Bubble Universe version of her. Rest in peace, Captain Verse. You'll be forever missed. eepy TeriTeri has a lot of potential on her side, even though she's coming at a weird time in the game right now with version 7.8 info being revealed on the CN side. Whether or not you're planning on skipping or pulling this new Theresa that embodies everything I'm feeling right now, making this video the day before the patch drops, let me, Jayniro, be your Pepega Honkai guide into the power of procrastination and eternal sleepiness and lack of motivation to, well, do anything at this point. That is Theresa Apocalypse, Schicksal's Imperative. Alright, chat. This time around, we're planning on keeping things short, or rather gonna try to, because Theresa's a total mood for me right now. Despite being a really strong Valkyrie, there's been this sentiment that eepy Teri is pretty weak. However, this couldn't be further from the truth. Part 2 characters have felt pretty weird and complicated since their initial inception, but the one thing they haven't been is bad, and this embodiment of both engineers and content creators alike fulfills this even more so. Despite being a total slacker at work, TeriTeri is an expert at reviving the quantum battlesuit typing so that Susanna no longer has to do all the heavy lifting on her own. In addition, she brings a playstyle that feels very unorthodox and, to my knowledge, is the first of it we've seen in the entire game. We've had plenty of off-field characters and quick rotation characters on hand already, but Theresa combines these aspects while doing her own thing.
Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing.
She can either be a damage dealer or support, and they both mesh within her kit entirely since she generally follows the same game plan regardless of whichever style she's being played in. A majority of her usefulness comes unironically from her slacking off and leaving all the work to her puppets on the field. Think like Woba from Genshin, where Xiangling throws him out, presses Q and leaves the field while they do all the heavy lifting for the team. Theresa's does the same thing, but isn't as universal like Xiangling. Simply pressing ult outside of Stellar Outburst lets Theresa trigger Time Frozen Domain and activate Break Time instantly, leaving her puppets to fight on the field for her. During this time, you can swap out to your other teammates to continue the rotation, while the puppets deal a fair amount of lightning damage themselves. This also triggers Time Fracture, which will activate the QTEs of pretty much most Valks that you would be running with her. After about 5 seconds of break time, Theresa can swap back onto the field to trigger Work Done in Dreams, which triggers Time Frozen Domain and causes the puppets to collide, dealing a large amount of lightning damage and also inflicting Quantum Collapse on all enemies on the field at once. It also regens 300 stress out of 600, which will lead straight into her own damage capabilities. Theresa herself has 2 states, Don't Want to Work and Let Me Leave Work, basically how I feel every day. In the Don't Want to Work state, Theresa's 3 sequence basic attack builds 75, 75, and 150 stress respectively, meaning ordinarily she needs to do 2 full sequences to max out her stress. After it's maxed out, Theresa gains access to her combo attack that allows her to change states. Executing it in the Don't Want to Work state lets her perform either Sleep Helper on the ground or Message Blocking in the air to deal damage and enter the Let Me Leave Work state. In this state, Theresa needs to be in the air to relieve stress. Her 2-sequence mid-air attack can relieve all of her accumulated stress in your typical Kuda fashion from Herta and finish off with Work Is Over alarm to deal massive lightning damage, clear any remaining stress because it can be activated early, cause 2 seconds of global time fracture, and go back to the Don't Want to Work state. During both of these states, TeriTeri has her weapon skill that functions slightly differently depending on the state. In the Don't Want to Work state, Theresa throws a ball at the enemy to build up 300 stress, which is great since she instantly gains 300 stress from swapping in via QTE and exiting ult, meaning this wombo combo will instantly let her go back into Let Me Leave Work. In Let Me Leave Work though, this skill lets Theresa perform Stress Transfer, which deals lightning damage and inflict a substitute mark on the first enemy hit. This mark causes Theresa to deal more total damage, but also when removed, either restores 5 SP and 500 HP to herself, or 5 SP to her teammates depending on if Astral Ring is activated or not. Basically whether she's in a Part 2 or Part 1 team. That's pretty much the gist of Theresa's kit. Now there's one last piece though that I haven't mentioned that I know you're probably wondering why, and it's because it flows somewhat into the team partners that Theresa pairs up with, and that's her Astral Ring. Theresa hails from the World Star specialization, our first Valkyrie since Senadina, seeing as every Valk since then has been Wheel of Destiny Valks. If you're not familiar with how these specializations work, Wheel of Destiny typically is very selfish in that during Stellar Outburst, the Wheel Valk remains on field and triggers Shadow Star attacks. World Star, on the other hand, allows the rotation style gameplay to continue through the usage of domain resonance marks and resonance attacks. As for Rite of Oblivion, we still don't really know exactly what its specialty is, other than that it can conform to other Astral Ring specializations, since we only have Coralie and also Vita now on the way. Unlike Senadina and Helia, Theresa doesn't lay an anchor on the field as a resonance mark. Rather, during Stellar Outbursts, she summons her puppets to the field that both transform into domain resonance marks that can be triggered from resonance attacks to deal lightning damage. The coolest part about Theresa is that while she's the leader in the team, her puppets will devour any domain resonance marks produced by other teammates and auto-trigger resonance 3 times for each mark, dealing lightning damage every half a second up to 7 seconds. With the power of her puppets on the field, Theresa no longer has access to her normal ult, since it changes into a new one during Stellar Outbursts that causes her puppets to deal big lightning damage, cause 3 seconds of global time fracture, and also inflict quantum collapse on surrounding enemies once. Additionally, while in Stellar Outbursts, like other World Star Valks, Theresa gains quantum mech energy. 6 to be specific. This increases her stress meter from 4 to 6, but automatically fills it up when Stellar Outburst is unleashed and has her instantly enter the let me leave work state. At this point, Theresa can kuru even longer, up to 5 times, and the 6 quantum mech energy usage triggers work is over alarm to deal massive lightning damage like before, while also triggering resonance attack. The only major change I've noticed from the CN beta to now is that while Theresa has quantum mech energy, she no longer has access to her weapon skill, and that's because instead of taking time out of her rotation to inflict a substitute mark with it, she can now inflict it from her first sequence attack that consumes quantum mech energy. Honestly, it makes the rotation as a whole run a lot smoother, and speaking of her rotation, we've already gone over it in a sense, but let's go over it again. Outside of Stellar Outburst, Theresa wants to ult as fast as possible. Instantly, in fact, in Abyss, since you start with 90 SP and Teri's only costs 50 SP. After, swap out to your other teammates and do their rotations, and then finish off with Theresa's swap back in to regain stress, and top it all off with weapon skill. Combo attack to change states, and mash attack until she breaks the alarm clock to deal massive lightning damage. Either repeat or activate Stellar Outburst and ult while using up all quantum mech energy, and continue the teammate cycle since the resonance attacks deal more damage after all her quantum mech energy is used up. Finish off on Theresa and start everything over again. Pretty simple and straightforward for the most part once you get your hands on her, but there are some additional nuances with her kit. I'll save those for the team section though, since this bit has already been longer than my will to live. Theresa's equipment is fairly a no-brainer. Obviously, her signature weapon and stigmata set are the go-tos if you're looking to compete in some sense. As we all know, weapons in this game are bonkers, and her signature is no exception from this. Vacation Sense is highly sought after for her and really completes the package of TeriTeri. She gains more total and elemental damage for herself, causes enemies to take more total damage from resonance and shadow star attacks, can inflict more paralyzed trauma, and increases the team's elemental and physical damage. However, the 2 main takeaways for its usefulness are these. She gains 300 additional stress from QTE and ult finisher, and she gains the quantum shield that auto-negates a collapse attack and can trigger 1 instance of collapse at the same time. Basically, she gets a get out of jail free card, and her gameplay becomes smoother so you can insta-change states after QTE or ult finisher. Very useful, and for overall smoothness of gameplay, essentially a must. Thelma's weapon isn't as useful, and the Forge weapon just pales in comparison to both. Her Stigmata set now, do I even really need to talk about this? It's craftable, so there's no reason why this shouldn't be equipped on her other than lack of resources, which is a problem because why are Source Prisms still as scarce as they are? They're more scarce than Honkai cubes were back in the day at this point. Anyways, the T, M, and B pieces grant increased lightning damage dealt, total damage dealt, and total damage taken respectively. Each stigma also has an additional effect for this Teri specifically. T gives an effect depending on the conditions met, increasing her own lightning damage, her teammates' lightning damage, or the team's total damage. Most often, you'll see the first 2 activated and not the last one as much. M causes enemies to take more lightning damage from Theresa and also increases the team's damage when she's not the leader in a World Star team. The B piece has multiple effects based on the activated Astral Ring, ranging from more total damage taken, lightning damage dealt, and physical damage taken, which will aid her in her respective teams. Looking at the 2 and 3 piece effects, we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Card territory, seeing all the different effects available depending on the activated Astral Ring type. Also, if it's not activated at all, i.e. in a Part 1 team, and also depending on whether Stellar Outburst is activated as well. All of these buffs increase the damage output of the team in a multitude of different states, as it gives tons of total damage, elemental damage, and physical damage effects. I'm literally simplifying this because I don't want this video to be super long. That gameplay explanation was already long enough on its own. Alright, let's talk whale. Unless you're a Teri stan, chances are most everybody is going to stop at S0. And honestly, I think that's perfectly fine because that's what I normally do anyways. If you are going to pick up any rank ups, listen closely because this is going to fly by faster than your wallet for Jane Doe. TeriTeri doesn't really have many unlockables within her rank ups. S1 is an increase to her Astroing subskill Never Give Up. S2 unlocks 2 new abilities. Bulk Transfer Tasks fires a bonus puppet pinball from Aerial second sequence or Quantum Mech Energy's second sequence and Stellar Outburst to deal more lightning damage. Considering you'll see this twice, maybe 3 times max during Stellar Outburst, it's nice but nothing crucial. However, Unbothered Dream lets stress transfers trigger Ultimate Evasion skill, which causes 3 seconds of global time fracture and builds up 300 stress as well. Definitely a rank up to have if you're aiming to score Memorial Arena for sure. S3 is her first leader skill increase, and S0 not only maxes the level cap on a weapon skill subskill, but also unlocks coffee flavored bitter melon juice, which increases the damage dealt by the first 2 sequences of basic attack and Quantum Mech Energy. S1 onwards are purely upgrades to skills in the kit, which is honestly surprising because usually S has another skill unlocked, but I guess that's not the case here. Last but not least, let's talk about who Teri works with. I'm scripted in this part because there's a lot to talk about with our teams, so let's jump right into it. Theresa in a nutshell isn't necessarily an upgrade or replacement to Senna, but rather more of a side grade in a sense. She can fit into pretty much any Part 2 comp like Senna due to what she brings to the table, and she even becomes the new best in slot for a very popular and still much so prominent Part 1 team. First and foremost, let's discuss Part 2, as most players jumping into Honkai nowadays want to be focusing on building out their Part 2 roster, with Part 1 pretty much being seen as an afterthought. Teri slots in very well with Worldstar teams and has a couple to boot. In both team comps, Senna is the ideal best partner for Teri. They're both lightning damage types, which meshes really well together despite both granting generic elemental buffs. With Teri in the lead, you can mix and match between Thelema, Lantern, and Helia, but ideally Thelema works the best here due to how frequently she can proc resonance attacks with her moment of indulgence. With the Lazy Overseer supporting our Pride and Joy Senadina, the team comp changes slightly. Here, Theresa ideally replaces Thelema, as with Senna in the lead, Helia is stuck to her hip in a sense due to how naturally they mesh together in a team rotation and the buffs Helia brings to Senna. Thelema is very strong and she still has her place in the team, but in terms of fitting in Theresa, some fights do exist where Theresa can perform better. As for Wheel of Destiny comps, this one is a bit complicated. Wheel of Destiny teams are very selfish by nature, and most comps cycle between either 2 characters or don't even really cycle at all because the enemies die too fast or boss phases clear fast enough to rebuild Astral Ring intensity during the mid phase. It becomes a mix and match game depending on the stage and boss to fit your team to your respective needs. This will more than likely hold true for future Wheel of Destiny DPSs, but as of right now, due to the powerful options already at hand, not saying that Theresa is bad because she's not, she's great, but it's hard to find an ideal place where she can fit in as the de facto best in slot support for Wheel of Destiny teams. Like I said earlier, somewhat of a side grade to Senadina in this sense. As for the Part 1 teams, there exists one team and one team only where Schicksal's Imperative becomes the new best in slot unit, and that's with Lunar Vow. There's a specific part of a subskill I omitted from mentioning earlier when talking about her kit, and it's for this specific reason. Her ultimate skill tree contains a subskill node that states, after using Word Done in Dreams, teammates deal 40% more total damage. This is great for her Part 2 teams, but what I didn't mention was that there's an exception. When Schicksal's Imperative has other teammates that are Theresa, they gain 17% Elemental Breach instead. This means effectively with all the buffs this Theresa provides to the team, and being a phenomenal damage dealer herself, she completely outdoes what HTR brings to the table for lightning team comps. Rather than having to constantly worry about whether or not you can activate HTR's ult, with Schicksal's low SP cost for her ult, she's a shoo-in for the Luna team and makes the rotation run even faster. This team comp is malleable however you see fit because you can choose to run her with Eden, Griseo, or even HTR for more stacking buffs. In my own personal experience, I saw the highest scores with Eden, but take it with a grain of salt since beta to service levels can act a little bit funky sometimes. Overall, this new Theresa comes at a very weird time. She's unironically very strong, but also niche at the same time due to her being quantum. Finding a guaranteed spot in a current meta Part 1 team is really nice, but at the same time, I'm sure we're going to see Part 1 teams get phased out slowly but surely in a sense as we go further and further into Part 2. Her place in the Wheel of Destiny comps is a bit rocky right now, but I think we'll probably see more use in the future with other Wheel of Destiny characters. However, this doesn't mean that she is useless, as if you are missing some other Wheel of Destiny characters, Theresa would be a shoo-in just like Senadina is as well. She is, however, a shoo-in as well for World Star teams. If that's your jam, definitely give her a strong consideration, because paired up with Senna, the World Star team finally feels up to par with Wheel of Destiny teams in terms of damage output and speed. If you guys enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate if y'all dropped a like on the video and sub to the channel, as that's the easiest and freest way to support your boy. I also stream most nights on Twitch at twitch.tv/Jayniro, so be sure to drop by and say what's up. I'd be more than happy to say what's up and hang out. This past month, I've been catching up on the main 4 Hoyo games with months and months worth of story, and I'm happy to say we did it, but that's why I apologize for the lack of content on the channel lately. I do have a Qingyi video in the works, but unfortunately couldn't get it out in time before her banner went away, so let me know if y'all want to still see it as well. I'm more than likely gonna be dropping it if I don't drop it soon, probably during a rerun banner with Qingyi, because she's undoubtedly strong. With that being said, be happy and kind to yourself and the world, and I'll see y'all in the next video, alright? Done it.